that we are going to cover today is React and React Native, like the basic setup and folder structure, then styling of the React Native components, and the navigation between the screens. So these four topics I will cover. Rest will cover by side. Okay. So, just get a quick recap on React. So, React is mainly intended to designed to build a web application. So, it was initially released by Facebook on 2013. So, it uses the concept of the virtual DOM, and the interfaces are constructed in HTML elements. So, like we use in HTML, here the syntax is quite similar, like div tag and p tag is used. So how is it different from React Native? So what additional feature does that React Native have? Okay, so React Native, it is released by same company, the Facebook, on 2015. And if React is intended to build a web application, React Native is mainly focused to build native mobile application, and it uses the concept of native API. And the term native means UI is constructed with underlying platforms built UI elements. So, like for Android and for iOS, like their specific native UI is associated with React Native. And here, if the syntax is this, here the syntax is view. Like both has the same objective. Okay, like here, like whenever we are using the React, like we are putting the text inside the p tag or span. So here we are using text instead of p. So what the common factor in React and React Native that we are going to discuss, like so using the component to construct interfaces, that is a common concept in React and React Native. If you are not that familiar about components, like Sai will discuss about components in much more detail. So basically, components are reusable things that we can use in our code. Okay. So like I basically explain like React Native is used to build mobile applications. So what are the other ways that we can use to develop mobile application? There are two methods, that is native app and other is hybrid app. So what is native app? So native applications are specifically designed for particular OS. So since it is specifically designed for a particular OS, it is faster and reliable on UX, but its maintenance cost is little bit high. For example, to develop a specific application, so consider like to-do app. I need to develop a to-do app in Android. So I can use either Java or Kotlin. Similarly, for iOS, I can use Objective-C or Swift. So there comes our hybrid apps. So using the hybrid apps, like using the React Native, we can build the same application. Like we need to write the code only once. Okay. So it will be both applicable to Android and iOS using the native components there. So it combines the feature of native and web application, and it is typically easier and faster to develop than native apps. Okay, so is there any doubt till I discuss? Like, if there any doubt, you can ask me. I assume like there is no doubt, so I'm moving to next slide. Okay. So like next we are going to discuss about the environmental setup of React Native. So like there are two ways to build React Native, like either to use Expo or to use React Native CLI. So how Expo and React Native CLI are different. So Expo, if you are a beginner, it will be better to get code with Expo CLI because it is in controlled environment and no additional build configuration is in Expo and provides a managed code. But using the React Native CLI, we have more control over the app, and like there are additional configurations required. So in this presentation, we are completely discussing based on the React Native CLI. So React Native CLI, for React Native CLI, I'm only explaining the basic steps. So detailed description of how to build an environmental setup is here in the link. So using this like link, we can install those things. So first we need a node. If you are developing for Android, we need Android Studio. If you are developing for iOS, we need Expo. Then we need to install React Native CLI globally. For this, the command is this one. And after that, that React Native is in our machine. Okay, so we need to initiate a project. So in a project, this one. So this one, NPS React Native init, and the name of our project. Then the next step is we need to connect that with our physical device. Okay, so that we are to connect with the Metro bundler, we are using this command React Native start reset cache. So it helps to reset the cache as well. Then, so React Native, the companies that are using React Native, like obviously Facebook developed React Native. So Facebook Ads Manager, Instagram, all are using React Native, and other companies you also that use React Native is described here. So, and next I'm going to React Native style, how we can style in React Native. So, React Native styles are based on CSS with a few key differences. There's no CSS files, and two common ways to define component styles are inline style and style sheet. So, I will explain like how inline styles and style sheets are different. Okay, so this is here you saw the echo like we are defining the styles inside the view tag itself. So this is what we call inline styling. So basically style equal to then in the array like we are typing what are the styles that we need to include in this component. So here we 200 high 200 and background color sky blue. So how is it different from style sheet? So what is style sheet? Style sheet API gives consistent way to define our style outside of our component definition. So if this is our component, this is our style sheet API. We are getting these styles from the style sheet API from React Native. So using the style sheet, we are defining like style sheet.de, we are defining width, height, and background color with like in my style. So I am calling this my style here. Okay, so just to suppose like I need to include multiple styles. For example, here to include multiple styles, what can I do? So to apply multiple styles, we can include that in a like array. Like here, it is just a symbol styles dot my style. So if suppose standard text have with 200 height, 200 background color, sky blue, while fancy text have other styles like font size, something, align item, something. So I also need to include that thing here. For that, I need to wrap it inside an array. Okay, so that's the method to apply multiple styles. Hope it's clear. Then I'm moving to name and default exports. Like if you see here, like here you saw defaulting. So what does that mean? So exports with default tag are default exports, and exports without default tag are named exports. So is it the only difference? Okay, is it the only difference? No. Like if you are using export default exports, we are using default imports as well, right? So we are using that default thing like default imports somewhere else. So in default exports only allow single exports in a single file, so that we don't need to add the exact name of that being exported. I will explain that while we are coding in the coding session. So when you want to import a name component, use same name as exported in curly brackets. So curly brackets is mandatory. For example, here it is view style sheet. So all these are exported from named exports. So that's why we are using curly braces here. But here it is exporting from default export. So that's why there is no need to add curly braces here. Okay, hope you got the idea. Then I'm moving to React Native navigation. So typically in React Native, there are three types of navigation menu available: Stack Navigator, Tab Navigator, and Drawer Navigator. I will show a picture to demonstrate it. So this is Stack Navigator, and this is Drawer Navigator, and this is Stack Navigator. I hope it's clear from the picture itself. Like this is stacked, like one screen is stacked under other screens. So like you are, I think you all are using multiple apps, so you are familiar with Drawer Navigation and Tab Navigator, etc. So right now, due to the time shortage, I am explaining only Stack Navigator part. So installation. So how we can use Stack Navigator in our application. So first we need to install React Navigation. So how to install React navigation, all those are in this document. So like first we need to install React navigation either using npm or yarn. Then we need to install that dependencies related to that. Then need to install that React navigation stack. So this all the installation part. Now comes to implementation part. So like for stack navigator to implement, we need the routing, like the navigation container, import navigation container in app.js or the router file. Then we need to import create stack navigator. Then we need to wrap the navigation container around the screens in the app.js or the router file. Okay. So, like, why we are studying like navigation? Basically, the basic objective of navigation is to navigate between the screen. So, suppose here I have a screen named home screen. So there is also a button like go to details. So when I click on that button, it should navigate to other screen like details screen. So for that, the basic how is the basic code that is described here. Here you can see that there is a button with title go to details. On pressing this event handler, on pressing it is navigation to navigating to details. So details is the route. So I will also explain that route in the coding session. So for this to work, we need to use navigation props. So if you are not that much aware about the props, I will explain about props and props. So I already set up the contents here. So like if you are very new to React Native, like after initiating the project that is npx, React Native, in like all those commands, we are getting a screen. I will show that how that screen looks like. Just a second. So So this is how our screens looks like after initiating and after connecting to Metro Bundler. This is how our screens looks like. Okay. So this SRC, that part I added. So what all the changes that I'm going to make, I'm putting all those things in this folder, SRC folder. Okay. So in the SRC folder, there are different other folders like assets, components, navigation, redux, screens, etc. Right now, we are not using these folders. As the complexity of the project increases, we need these folders, and we need to add files or contents in these folders. So right now, I'm describing how to navigate and the styling part that is described under the screens. So if there is an authentication part in your app, we need to divide that into two sections, like the before login and after login. Okay, so here there is no login setup or authentication setup, so I'm not using that. So I'm assuming that it is after login setup kind of thing. Okay, so this is my landing screen. It is my counter screen. So in the landing screen, there is another two files like index.js and another file styles.js. So initially, all these are we are creating. Okay, so we need to create index.js. We need to create styles.js. So after that creating, there won't be anything. And I added all these things. Okay, like previously I explained, like using styles, like we can use inline styles or we can use style sheet. So it will be always better and wise to use that style sheet in separate file like styles.js. So here only the style sheet will be here, so that our code looks much more elegant. And okay, I'm like what all the things that we need to do here. This is the app one. Okay, this is the app.js. When we are initiating a file, we are modifying these files. So right now I named it app1.js, but previously it was app.js, and I'm creating a new app.js here. Okay, fine. So I told, like before creating like navigation, we need to import navigation container, and we need to import create native stack navigator. Oh, and we also need to import the screens that we are going to navigate, or what are the screens that we need to include here. Okay, and we are defining this one, and wrapping everything under the navigation container, then this tag navigator, and we are defining the screens here. So here, this is my route name. Okay, from where I'm getting this, like I'm import like landing screen for component landing screen, the route name is landing, and for the counter screen, it is counter. Okay, then moving on to my landing screen. So like what all the changes, like app.js is directly connected to, I mean, index.js. So index.js is like our gateway. Okay, so here I am doing the little modification here because now my app.js, like this file will appear. A second, it is loading. After loading, the different screen will appear. So I will explain here. So go to counter screen. This is a button. Okay. Okay, this is my landing screen index.js and this is my landing screen styles.js. So on clicking on this, I'm importing this button API from React Native, and the title is go to counter screen, and there is a like callback function on press, like even handler is there, like on press, it is navigating to counter because I defined the counter screen's route name as counter, so it will navigate to my counter screen. So on it, sometimes there will be some cache. So on clicking that this button, go to counter screen button, it is navigating to my counter screen. Okay, so this is how we are doing it. We are passing props here navigation. So I hope it's clear. Then previously I explained like we are using named and default exports. Can you see here we are using named default exports. So when we are using default exports, there will be only one file here. Like we can use in a single file, we can use only single component as a default export. So if I am exporting this one, like I don't need to do it exact name. Default exports we need to put the same name, but in the case of named exports we don't need to put the same name. Just a second. Okay, yeah, see here in default exports, because it is the single file that we are using here, so we don't need to put the same import as the style is here in here. Okay, hope is clear. And coming to navigation, inline styling, and yeah, inline styling. Here the color is red. I'm using the same, using the inline styling. Yeah. Uh, okay, like here I'm using the inline styling. Previously I'm using the style sheet. Okay. Is there any doubt in the session, like in this part? Hello.
Yeah, so I do have a doubt. So when like in web we can use tags like HTML, right? So here we use these view and
Yeah,
buttons. So I'm seeing here in the React Native side these are called like all the components, right? So for
yeah. Hmm.
so if maybe some things are not here, like I don't see like much amount of components here. So do we have libraries and everything? Like,
Yeah. We can use, like, for example, just a second. In that Apple.js, we are this library, like we are navigation container that we are taking from the React Navigation API, and there are components also. That component parts I will discuss. There are reusable components that we can add in this React Native project. For example, if I in here in this landing screen index.js, I'm using a button. Instead of button, I can use it like I can customize my button. Okay, like I can customize my button using touchable opacity here, and that we can also do it here, similar to React, because both share the concept of the using the component to construct interfaces. So that's why the React and React Native main tag like learn once. Learn once, use anywhere. So if there is no doubt, I'm stopping my presentation here, and Sai will continue with next.
Hello.
Yeah, any doubt?
By, yeah, one doubt. Why you use functional component? Why you not use class component?
Like in functional components, like we have many concepts like use states. There are hooks, functional hooks. So functional hooks, using functional hooks, we can easily um, render the things like that. Sai will explain. So because he's discussing about the functional components and state components as well in his speech.
Okay, continue please.
Okay. 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 So I'm stopping my presentation here.
Today I'm going to cover these topics in a React Native functional based hook. So the topics are class component, like components. In that components we have a two components, class component and function components, and the other topic is state, and other topic is hooks and props handling. These are the topics I'm going to cover now. So going to the next. So component is a independent and reusable bit of code. Like it is a independent, it is a block of code. We can use that block of code in any component by calling it, by importing it in a other component also. For example, we can see a website called Amazon. It consists of header, and the middle part, it is the components, and the footer part. These are the common components used in other components also. If you go to the home page, if you go to the about page, in that components are like it consists of common components, header and footer. So by creating single header footer, we can call that header footer at anywhere at any component. So the main important, like the main important of the components is like we can call and we can reusable. So in React Native there are two main types of components that make up of application. One is functional component, and second one is a class component. These are structured the same as we would regular native apps for the mobile applications. So going to the next slide. So we'll discuss about the differences between the class component and functional components. As we can see that class component requires use to extend from React, and components are created render function which returns a React element. So uh, in the functional component, it is a plain JavaScript pure function that accepts props as an argument and returns a React elements. And the second point, in the class component, it must have the render method returning from the JSX. So it is similar to the HTML. So as we see that in the functional component, there is no render method used in the functional component. So, and coming to the third point, also known as the class component is a stateful component because they implement logic and state. But also in functional component known as that it is a stateless component, as they simply accept data and display them in some form. They are mainly responsible for rendering UI. Okay, and coming to the fourth point, in the class component, the React lifecycle method can be used inside the class component. For example, component did mount. So, and in the functional component, React lifecycle methods uses component did mount cannot be used in the functional components. So for that purpose, the hooks topics has entered in the functional component that I'll discuss with you later. So and coming to the fifth point in the class component, class component uses constructors are used to store the data. No, sorry, use the to store the state. But in the functional component, we do not use the constructors to store the state. So, uh, coming to the next slide, we'll discuss about the class component. Class components are JavaScript classes that extend the base class from the React Native component. So, this is a bread and butter for most modern mobile apps built in React Native. These components are simple classes made up of multiple functions that add multiple functionalities to the application. So as we discussed in the differences between the class component and functional components, that class based component has the two best features. They are state management and the life cycle feature. So these are the best features available in the class component. We cannot use the hooks concept in the class component because it is already the state management and life cycle feature is available in the class component. So this is a code for creating the class component in the React Native. So as you can see, this is a code and right side is the output of that one. I'll show my VS Code and write the code to create the class component. So after creating the project, we'll get only this type of this kind of files, and we have a JSON package.json. It consists of dependencies like as Mitlesh, I think Mitlesh or some other person asked about the libraries. So the to know about the libraries, so we install the dependencies here, React and React Native. So these are the npm libraries used to install, and we can able to access by importing it in our component. So this is the app file. So basically first I have created one src folder, and in that I have created one more folder called components to explain you guys like clearly. So in that folder I created two files, class component class component and functional components. So these are the two files I created. Now we as we discussed, I'll explain the class component. So this is a code for the class component class component. So as you can see, it consists of libraries, view text, which is from importing from the React Native, and React from the React. So these are the libraries we are importing, and this is a code to as we discussed in the differences between the function and class component. The render method should be there in the class component, and these are the view I'm using, and text I'm returning here, and I'm importing this component to the app.js file. As you can import it by calling it by the name of the component like this. So when you call like this, it automatically imports here. So as you can see, the output will look like this in my emulator. So I have given the text hello world, and I have given the inline styling called red color red here. So this is how we create the class component. We are going to the next topic called uh, the second slide, how we create the functional component. Basically functional components are simpler. They don't manage their own state or have access to the lifecycle method provided React Native. They are literally plain old JavaScript functions, and are sometimes called stateless components, as we discussed in the differences between the class component and functional components. Basically, before 2018, everyone are used class based components. So it is very difficult to difficult to develop the states in the class components. For that purpose, React have invented a new concept called hooks concept in the functional based components. It comes up in the year 2019 of version 16.8. So after that, the hooks concept has been placed in the functional based components. So the hooks consist of as the class based component, that state management and lifecycle feature, these two features are available in the hooks concept. So this is the code to develop for the functional based component, to develop the functional based component, as we can see. So we'll see that in the code itself, like in the VS code, as I have written the functional based code the same as I have created for the class component. So as you can see, the library is called, and here we are not writing the render method in the functional based component. So and we use the view and text here in the functional component. So we can call that functional based component here by giving its name. I given the name as functional level component, functional based component. So this is my output as I have given the same. So I'll edit my name. So it is get updated and hello world, and I have given my name here. So it is get updated. So this is how we create the functional based component in the in the React Native apps. So going to the anyone have any doubt?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there any difference in terms of performance in both these components, class component or functional component?
There is
Like,
no
is there
difference, only the state management, how we write the code, the difference between the state, that's it. There is no difference other than that state management.
okay? Yeah, that's
Yeah. So I'm moving to the next topic. Sorry. The my next topic is state. State is mainly to declare a multiple variables of values in the state. So while we can think of purpose of arguments, and you can use a configure and that are read only how components are rendered. But according to the state, it is like a component personal data storage. State is useful for handling data that changes over time, or state comes from user interaction, and state gives your components memory. So basically the state is used to store the data, and we can update the state by taking by using the state management that we'll see in the code. So this is the state definition, and so this is a slide for the code, how we declare the state in the both functional level component and class level component. So I'll show the code how we use the state in the functional based and the class based components. So first I'll explain about the function based component, how the state is used. To use the state, first we need to declare a state like this. This is an example I'm going to explain. So in the state, initially I'm taking a string called psi. So when you are using the state use state, automatically it is like imported here in the React. So this is the how we declare the state here, and we call the state here. So as you can see, I have given the initial state name as Sai. I'm calling the text. I'm calling the state here state with the name. So I'm rendering here in the emulator. Uh, I'll increase the size also. This is an inline styling I'm using. So as you can see, everyone, I can render the state here. So this is how the state is declared here. To update the state, so first we'll write a function here. So to update the state, we need to call this set state name, like as we declare here. So in that we need to declare another name, as I'm using welcome. This is updating the state I have created. So I will create one button to update that state. So we have to call the button like this, and we need to give the title to that. We'll give the name here, name. And on press, this is a like event handling we use in the button itself, like in the on press, when you on press that, this event handling handler will trigger and will call the function what we are using to update the state. So I'm calling that function here. So as you can see, we can the button is appear here. So when you on click this button or this change name, it is the state gets changed, like state gets changed from Sai to welcome to the soft prodigy. So this is how we declare the state in the functional based component. So we'll look the same code in here in the class level, how we declare the state should be in object, and we need to declare like this. And we'll create a function update name. So in class level we use this, as we discussed about the constructors, this dot set state of name, what we consider here. So first we'll take the initial state of the class level class based component, this dot state dot name. So it will appear when you call this component. Basically I called the functional base, so I need to call the class base component. So as you can see, the initial state is psi in the class based component. So now I'll update it with the state updating. I'll create one button as I created in the functional based. So this is a button same as created in the functional based. So we need to import the button here, and we need to call it update function. This dot update name. So initially the name is Sai. When you click this one, welcome to SoftProdigy. The state is updating in the class based component. So only the difference, like in the functional based and functional based and class component, that we declare declaration of the state is different. So that is the difference between class and functional based component. So you have any doubt in the coding? So I'm moving to the next topic. My next topic is hooks in React Native. As we discussed that in 2019, the hooks concept has been entered in the functional based component, that to develop the state management and life cycle future in the functional based components. So what is a hook? Hooks are new addition in React Native. They let you state and other React Native features without writing a class. Hook is a special function that lets you hook into React features. For example, useState is a hook that lets you add React state to function components. Well, we are other hooks later. So this is what we use for what is the use of hooks. So when coming to the next one, when would I use a hook? If you are writing a function component and realize you need to add some state to it, previously you had to convert to a class. Now you can use a hook inside the existing function component. We are going to do that right now. So as I discussed, that hooks are like only used in the functional based component, not in the class based components after 2019. And everyone, after 2019, everyone are interested to use only the functional based component, not the class based component. So going to the next slide, that what is the difference between the use state and use effect comes in the hooks concept. Basically in the use state, the React use state hook allows us to track state in a functional component, but in the use effect hook allows you to perform effects in your components. And coming to the next second point, state general refers to data or properties that need to be tracking in an application. So in use effect, some examples of side effects are fetching data, directly updating the DOM, and timers. To use the use state hook, we first need to import it in our component, as I explained before the code. So that is how we declare the use state in the functional based component. So, and coming to the use effect, accepts two arguments. The second argument is optional, that is a dependencies used in the use effect. And coming to the fourth point, the use effect hooks is used for the storing variables that are part of your application state and will changes as the user interacts with your application. Use effect is a lifecycle hook, and it is a rule that execute immediately after return statement in React Native. So the main purpose of the use effect is it is a real time React hook. And this approach React hook, how we use in functional base, like we can use this use effect, that when you want to like when you want to execute this function, after the return statement in the component. So immediately the the DOM goes to the use effect function. I'll explain it in the coding side. So this is a code for how we use a use state variable in the how we declare the use state variable in functional component. And this is the output for the use effect variable in the functional based component. So I'll show the code for the use state and use effect how we use in the real time applications. So basically we can take a simple example called counter increment, like we can take the zero counter and set the count. Initially counter will be 0, and after that we'll take this function as a counter increment function. So initially I have given the counter count as a 0 state. I have declared a 0. So and called that state here count state, and we'll increment by giving a button here. We'll increment will increment by clicking that button. So we have created a function called counter function, counter increment function, and we'll set that with +1. So we'll call that function here count increment. So as you can see, initial state is 0 and the button is appears here. So when you click here, one second, sorry, I need to give this as a count state. So I have given the set count to by incrementing the count with the 1. So this function will get updated when we click this button. So as you can see, the initial is 0 state. When you click this button, it is the press handling function calls here counter increment. In that function we wrote set count. We are calling this state, and we are setting this count to incrementing with the +1. So when you click this button, the state will get incremented. So this is how we declare use state in the functional based component. It is also same like how here I have declared in the same in the class based component also, no differences, only the constructor how we called here. And so this is a use effect variable how we here called. And I'll explain this one use effect also, how we use the use effect. So this is a declaration of sorry, this is in the class based. So this is a declaration how we create the use effect, and we need to import it in the library. I'll say take a one console. As we discussed that use effect consists of two arguments, like another one is dependencies. So it initially I have not given the array that is a dependency 0. It consists of 0 dependencies. So sorry. As you can see, after the return statement, immediately the DOM goes to the use effect function. As you can see in the metro bundler, in the console, the clicked console is called here. So it is not repeated like so. As you can see that in the React lifecycle, it is a feature that after the return statement, immediately use effect will call the use effect function is called, like it is a fixed one, and it will be called after the return statement itself. So when I reload this app, it automatically calls the use effect function, and we are able to get that click console what we return here. So so when we click here, the state use effect will not call. So this is how we declare the use effect in the functional based component. So as any doubt in the use effect and use state, anyone have any doubt in this topic? So I'm going to move to the other topic. uh, the other topic is I'm going to explain like props, how the props is mainly, it is a the purpose of the props we used in the React Native to store to pass the data from one component to another component. As we can see here, props is just a shorter way of saying properties. They are useful when you want to flow of data in your app to be dynamically props, let you customize React Native components. So basically we are using for example, we are using a two components as a class component and a functional component. So when you want to transfer a data from one component to another component, so we use the concept called props here. So the main best feature of the props is like you can pass the data from one component to another component. So, and what is the difference between the state and the props? As we can discuss that state is like stores the data, and props are like passing the data from one component to another component. And in the React component, the props are the variables that we pass from one component to child, like parent component to child component. So, and this is an example for the props how we used in the functional based component. So why props used in the React Native? Props are used to provide properties to the component, using they can be modified and customized. These properties are passed to the components when the components is created. Props are used in both user defined and default components to extend their functionalities. As I'll show the code how the props are passed from one component to another component. As here we are calling the functional based component, think it as a functional based one component, and we are passing a name I. So and we need to call this that name here. To call that, we need to write the props here. So, and we need to that in a text, we need to call the props like this, name props dot name. So as you can see, size appears here, like I'm sending from the app.js component. It is a component, so I'm passing a name in the functional based component, The name is passed here with the props and calling that name with the props dot name. So the name appears here. The same concept used in the class based component. Not that there is no difference between the how we pass the component. Only the constructor will use this dot name. That's it. So this is how we use props in the function based and class based components. So anyone have any doubt in the props concept? So I'm thinking that there is no doubt in the props concept. So the last one is like learn once, write anywhere. This approach can experience a React web developer that any web developer like React web developer can able to make and write the code in the Android iOS itself. Like if has any basic knowledge in the React have a experience in the React, so they can write the code in React native also, can be able to develop the apps in the Android and iOS. So thank you everyone.